So I hope you're able to have some success in creating your model in the Nearpod, and you're able to post your explanation in the discussion area of that page. And also, don't forget, I hope you put those questions. That was key, to have the questions that you would ask as a student about that phenomenon on how did that tanker car implode. So those questions are the absolute key that we need to get out of the students. How that happens is an intriguing phenomenon, first of all. Second is a purposeful task in order for them to get their initial thinking out, which also starts kind of harvesting the questions out of the students. Those models serve that purpose. Now, what you may do with those models in the classroom is have individuals draw their own and then share out with a shoulder partner, and then they can share out the common thinking and the different thinking, and then some sort of a report out, if you'd like to, about the models. Sometimes a classroom would work on a consensus model, but before that even, you want to get the student questions out. Now, this is the next step and the key piece of the classroom that should be posted for days to come. That's called the driving question board, or the DQB for short. Now, the driving question board, you'd want to create one for each class period, as you can see. And you definitely wouldn't want, during day one, is to have each class period seeing each other's. You want to hide the class period you just worked on in class bell change. What I've seen done is a couple different techniques with this. One being the teacher just stands on the board and solicits the questions from the students and starts writing them down in somewhat of a linear fashion, columns and lists, and sometimes they just go crazy with tons of questioning. But the most effective that I've seen, that also kind of encourages a culture of scientific community and thinking, is the sticky note process, where students will post their questions on a sticky note, one per sticky note. What then the teacher does is facilitate a discussion and literally get the kids up out of their seat, surround the driving question board, and do a share out. Now, it's strongly encouraged to have the kid themselves, the student themselves, come up to the board, read the question, and then post it. Some students, are more socially ready for that, but all kinds of encouragement steps could be utilized, and I have another training on that on a different day. But the idea would be to get each kid to have their question out and just put it on here no matter what's being said. Oh wait, yeah, you're thinking, what about the class clown? Class clown comes up here to get a laugh and puts something, again, school appropriate, but still trying to be funny. Treat it as a question, non-reactive. Just put it up there. Maybe they're not trying to be funny. You ever thought of that? Maybe it's just what they were thinking. And you want to honor their thinking and not pass a judgment as the teacher and not encourage the others with negativity. So after you have a classroom full of questioning, the teacher then starts to facilitate the grouping. So this question and this question sound awful alike. In fact, they're the same question. So we're going to put those together. And this one is under this particular type of thinking, and so is this one. They're not the same question, but they would require us to do similar investigation or research on the topic. And so what you're getting is you take the student questions and you kind of cluster them by topic, interests that are together. So you got a class of 30 kids, you have 30 sticky notes up here, and you start clustering them. Now here's the key thing. This course is called Standards-Based Instruction Through Phenomenon-Driven Student Questioning, right? There's your student questioning. This cluster and this cluster and this cluster and any other cluster that you've put together, you know darn well that this one's going to go with that standard you got to teach tomorrow and for the next few days. And this one right here, that one, oh, that's the one I usually do. That one other that lesson I do, yeah, that's going to be next week. And then right before the DIA, I'm going to have this cluster here. We're going to go through that and those particular lessons that I normally do, except I'm going to make those even better now because I got the student thinking right here and I know where they're at. This is the student questioning driving the process. You maybe not even change your lesson planning in the future, things you've already always done. But you've got the questions by the students, and they're thinking they're driving the investigation in the classroom. That's the process. But I'm willing to bet anything that these questions start changing you. That these questions that they have start making you think about that lesson you do a little differently. That's my guess. Anyway, this is a very powerful process. It's a very powerful step. It does, what I've recommended here, it does require a certain culture created in the class. So what I like to offer on the bottom of this page, there's a button called resources. It'll lead you to a description, a photo of a poster of classroom norms that I developed with some students in Nebraska. And they developed their language on what the expectations are of the category of the norms. Now this really helped facilitate discussion actually with a bunch of kids that I didn't even really know very well because I just borrowed a classroom. And so when you have this culture developed, that in that sticky note share out, you actually encourage the quiet ones to eventually come out of their shell and give it a process. You have all the other students encouraging each other, asking like who hasn't spoken yet or who hasn't shared yet, who'd like to share first. You just start establishing that community. Maybe not every kid at first will share out because they're in a shell. That's okay. You could have a student represent their sticky note for the time being, but the key thing is to get that student's question on the board. And then also, what I didn't mention is, what about those outliers? They don't maybe all fit in a cluster that you're going to teach. Well, still honor those. Don't throw those off. That's just representing the student's curiosity. And there may be a time that you can address it. But just making sure that we honor all their questions, and that really honors them. So below this also is a video from Michael Novak. He's been one of the mentors in the process while I was in the writing project, and as I've learned some of the techniques that they utilize in this phenomenon-driven process. He was a middle school teacher, but before that he was an engineer. And so now he's actually a full-time facilitator of national writing projects under the NGSS. He's a wise person and a fantastic teacher. Just listen to his words as he explains the driving question board. You'll see an example of one of his in the background, and it's a bulletin board full of sticky notes. He liked getting every kid's questions out there and portraying them and displaying them in that fashion. And that worked for him. The key thing is to realize there's really no right or wrong way, but to know that there are multiple approaches to gather the students' questions, which is the key thing. We're about to move on to the next page, and you're going to see we're going to watch a teacher deliver a lesson in her classroom, and she doesn't use the independent model of initial thinking model like we did. She has a small group working on the initial thinking model. There's nothing wrong with that.